Okay, we're back. So, okay, next question. Favorite force power?
Um, hmm, I mean, as far as stuff that's like very wacky, I've always enjoyed like Force Maelstrom a lot. That's always been a nice ability. It's like combining a force repulse with telekinet. It's like creating a miniature black hole around you with telekinesis and lightning, and then just imploding basically. So, that's fun.
Mine has always been, well, I've always enjoyed telekinesis, but that's too obvious an answer. So I'm probably going to go with Tutiminis.
Ah,
I mean, theoretically, you could use 2 2 minutes to block like whole bunch of things.
true. That is a very true statement.
Like, didn't I know Kenobi has like, what is it, low level 2 2 minutes because he can't stop lightning, but he can stop things like glass shards, um, or
Blast bolts.
blaster bolts and fire.
Yep, that is true.
Yeah, and that's no mean feat. I mean, combative 2 2 minutes is really hard to pull off.
Well, of course, because the whole idea with Tutaminis is literally just absorbing and redirecting energy. It's not an easy feat. So it's like you have some that have the low tier, you have mid tier Tutaminis, which can do stuff like lightning, and then you have high tier that can literally like freaking catch lightsabers in midair.
Yeah. What else? And also there's force healing, but that's kind of a given. I've always enjoyed um like the more subtle force abilities like what is it called? Malakia or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, because and I've always enjoyed electric judgment. Not because it's a variant of force lightning, but because, well, it's basically it's basically what you want it to be. It's not like Sith lightning. It's not like you can just like you shoot lightning out of your hands and you fry somebody. It's more like it's what your actions like and what your thought process is at the time. So if I remember the story correctly, Plo Koon used the ability to save a little girl from a gang member, and he was in full control of his emotions. And I think that the Jedi should learn electric judgment, not just because it's a practical ability, but because theoretically you could use electric judgment to stop lightning, if I'm not mistaken.
If the application was done correctly.
Yeah, true. Okay, next question. Um, if you could cast anyone in a Star Wars film, who would you cast?
Ooh, dang, 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 dang. Crap. I dang. Okay. I thought of an interesting casting choice that I kind of would have been interested in seeing if they did like a Knights of the Old Republic type thing, or just the Old Republic in general. Uh, Josh Brolin as Lord Scourge.
That's interesting. My pick was probably it's Keanu Reeves as Revan
Oh my gosh, that actually would be a good one.
because seeing his work in John Wick, by the way, those films are amazing. Just imagine, imagine, um, Keanu with a lightsaber.
Okay, I changed my mind. There's one other actor I can think of more than Josh Brolin. Um, Gary Oldman.
Oh yeah. Who?
Because if you look up behind the scenes, Gary Oldman originally was supposed to be the voice actor for Grievous, but he had previous occupations, so he couldn't do it at the time, which is where they got Matthew Woods. Um, which literally Matthew Woods originally was just supposed to be a stand-in. He wasn't even supposed to get the role originally. It was just he was just doing stand-in voices for Grievous, and they liked it so much that Lucas was like, "Okay, just you're hired."
Yeah. Who would
But I
you?
would love to see Gary Oldman in a role. Now, what type of character he could play, that's a hard one to determine. But that's the problem. You're giving me too many actors, and I can think for characters. So, like, that's the problem. I'm thinking of actors, and then I'm thinking of their association with the character because, Gary Oldman's kind of the one for a new character. But if I'm to think of a character that's already established, Benedict Cumberbatch as Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Oh my god. Holy cow. That would be amazing. Oh my god. Why didn't I think of that?
Because I think Benedict Cumberbatch has the appearance, he has the mannerisms, and as displayed already through like both Doctor Strange and Star Trek, he already can convey that personality of being like the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah. If this was like classic, if he was still alive, I don't know if he's still alive, but I would cast.
Ronald hasn't died yet.
No, I was thinking Ricardo Montalban.
Oh yeah, good point.
I mean, yeah, you could. I mean, he's most known for playing Khan, but you could put him in a decent role in Star Wars, and maybe, but it would have to be. It would have to be. You have to really give him a good script, and you have to play to his strengths.
True.
The only other person I could think of would actually be maybe Robert Downey Jr. I mean,
As who?
just a new character.
I could see Robbie Downing Jr. as like a bounty hunter.
Yeah, or
I could
yeah,
in the Clone Life.
yeah, or yeah, and I'm speaking of actors. I'm really glad that they actually brought back Tamara Morrison as well, Boba Fett. But I'm really happy that they did that. Like he deserves praise for Star Wars Bounty Hunter and Episode 2, much to my dismay.
Well, and he also voice acted the clone narrator within the Battlefront 2 campaign.
Oh yeah, that's true. And he was also in Republic Commando. He did the voice work for 3-8. I really like him. I think if if they're doing what I think they're doing with Mandalorian, I think he's gonna be awesome.
Well, I'll be looking forward to seeing how things go with him.
Okay, so next question: if you could write a Star Wars novel, what would it be about?
Okay, this requires two answers because are we talking about a novel within the coexistence of the already expanded universe or something that would be incorporated in the new canon?
Uh, a little bit of both, or just like a fan fiction.
Um, well, the main thing that I've always wanted out of a Star Wars novel is the expansion on perspectives. So for me, there was always two type of things I always wanted to see that I think could have been covered more. The first one was, and thankfully this issue's kind of being addressed right now with the new canon because in Legends they had this where I loved the idea of telling Order 66 and the Rise of the Empire from the clones' perspective. That was always an interesting element to me, was seeing how they reacted to the changes and all that sort of stuff. And the Republic Commando book trilogy does a really good job at that. And thankfully, I feel like we're going to get something like that again with the Bad Batch series, um, assuming they handle it correctly. So, since that's kind of like the number one story I wanted, but given that it's being made already to a degree, I'm going to move on to my secondary choice, which is I want a story about the CIS point of view. Oh my gosh. One second.
All right, sorry about that. Well, while he's doing what he's doing, I was going to talk about actually my my idea for a novel or a story, a Darth Vader horror story. Oh God, if and just to throw a little icing on the cake, what the hell happened to Sev? That has been that has been plaguing me for 6 years
That,
now. Oh,
well, that's one of the biggest mysteries that unfortunately might not get solved. I mean,
well,
there's multiple theories on what's happened to him, so that's always been a
what's your theory on
question.
it?
I've always liked to believe that he just went MIA and just became like a mercenary or something.
Hmm. I've always been under the belief that he was captured, and then when, um, and this was before new canon, but I always like to think that he was kind of disillusioned, and he saw that what the Republic was becoming very slowly, and t- he he escapes captivity, and then he basically just a wanderer for the longest time, and then he joins up with the rebels, and then when Darth Vader is hunting down the group, he brings along his um, the remnants of Delta Squad, and Sev is like they're alive kind of thing, or like they're in the middle of a big battle, and Sev goes down and realizes that his squad mates they're alive and they're still kicking, and then the big shocker to the squad would be that Sev is alive, and then I know this is completely out of character, but Sev actually goes up to Darth Vader and basically negotiates a peaceful surrender of some kind.
I mean, it's an interesting outlook. A lot that would have to require a lot of good execution from a really good writer, though. So
I'm already in the process of working on it. I actually have the first couple chapters done. I actually did like a little perspective from Darth Vader's viewpoint when he's like doing maintenance. He's getting maintenance done, and he has to put his suit back on, and the needles are going into his neck, and he's thinking to himself, "I'll never get used to that." I thought, I mean, didn't Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader basically do that already?
yeah, that's kind of the thing. It's like a lot of these stories already exist. That's a problem with putting in the confines of the old EU because almost every story there is to be told is told. I think the only thing in Legends that hasn't been told that I would have loved to see is maybe like a Sith Lord who got disillusioned with the Order and tried to start something new. That'd be the only type of thing I would. But even then, Revan kind of did that. So it's kind of like that's the thing. By the time you get to the old EU, almost every single type of story that could exist has already been exhausted. So that's why, in the confines of the new canon, my original top pick was the clones, but since they're kind of already doing that, I would love one about the separatists. Because I think right now, especially when you account for Star Wars The Clone Wars, they don't really get into the separatist perspective that much. The closest we've ever gotten to it is when Padme meets up with her like old friend that was a separatist senator. That's the closest we ever have gotten to it. And even then, that's not really the same to me because that's just saying it on behind the scenes politics. It's not actually looking at it at the perspective of a separatist commander or a separatist soldier who actually legit just believed in the cause and was willing to fight for it. Like, imagine the flipping of the perspective where the clones are seen as scary to these people. Like, to me, there's so much story potential with that. And it would make it extra tragic how, if they actually kind of painted more human elements in the separatist movement in that light, it would just further highlight how tragic it was that they just got used up by Dooku and Palpatine.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the separatists as a core movement wasn't even really evil. It was actually trying to do what it believed was really justified because they thought, okay, the Republic was neglecting us and exploiting us. And we're tired of it. We just want to be our own thing and actually just have our own rules, our own implemented policies and such. And like I said, like everything, it just got hijacked.
Where was their like their core world? Was it Sereno?
No, Raxus.
Ah.
So the Raxus system was their capital world. So, it's like that's kind of where they were hanging out. Sereno was just Dooku's home world, but the whole point was that, Raxus and all these other systems in the Outer Rim really did just want to exist separately. And even a lot of the military commanders who hated the Republic, really hated it, did so because the Republic in some way, shape, or form screwed them over. It wasn't because, oh, yeah, we just want to be evil crapheads. So to me, it's like to portray a story that's more grounded in reality with the separatist movement would have been interesting. And do what's sad is that TCW could have done it. That's what's sad to me. Because TCW had a character that could have filled that role with Lux Von Terry.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the things.
Because the last time you see him, he's in season 3. When you see him in his first introduction with his mom, who's friends with Padme. And, Lux meets Ahsoka and they're like, hey, you're not that bad. We can actually get along. And obviously Ahsoka has that joke, like, I hope we don't have to meet at the battlefield for your sake, which they both laugh about.
Yeah.
And so you have this humanizing element, and what happens the next episode? The Coruscant bomb attack happens.
Oh, gosh. Oh, yeah.
And then Dooku, and this is the part that's wasted potential, Dooku framed the Republic for the death of Senator Von Terry. Dooku framed the Republic for doing it. And so it goes from that to season 4 where Lux just instantly knows Dooku's the one who did it. And it's such wasted potential. Like, imagine if there was an entire story arc about Lux being pissed off that his mom died by a so-called Republic attack. And so he joins the separatist military and is maybe a lieutenant for the droid army or something. Or something along those lines, and is actively fighting the Republic, and it's not till later that he figures out that Dooku was the one behind it. And so that instantly creates a feeling of betrayal. Like, what the freak? I've been fighting for a lie.
Yeah.
And it would have been interesting seeing a story like that. But unfortunately, TCW never did that because they couldn't even humanize the separatists for 2 seconds of their bloody life. It's like every military commander, as far as TCW is concerned, are dickheads. Every single one. It's like even just stereotypical generals or commanders or somehow evil where they just want to starve people to death and stuff. I'm like, this is not realistic. This is not how a movement would be portraying itself. Like, I can understand people like Grievous doing that, but like a normal separatist who commander who just wanted to join to free themselves from the Republic rule, yeah, no, they ain't gonna just want to starve people to death or do all the evil stuff the separatists did.
Like I
So,
can see like someone like Want Tambor because he's part cyborg, isn't he? I
well,
actually
Tambor's not even. I mean, Tambor is part of the Separatist Council, which is just composed of those corporations. So, but that's the problem. That's the thing that kind of pisses me off because there's only been two elements of the Separatists we've seen. It's either been through the Sith scheme, which I kind of include Grievous as part of that because even though Grievous was kind of kept in the dark, his loyalty first and foremost was to Dooku and Sidious. He really did not give a crap about the movement at all. Literally, to him, the movement was nothing more but a platform to fight the Republic.
and let's not forget how many times he destroys his own troops just because they say something witty or they complain. I mean, come on. I know Grievous is kind of he's a hard ass and he's kind of cruel, but those, as Dooku says, those battle droids are expensive. Actually, technically, no, they're not because you can just produce thousands of them.
Well, he's saying the battle droids are expensive within a general cost frame, the same way as any droid are. Yeah, by droid standards, they're cheap, but when you're buying thousands of them, or millions actually, because it stated the droid army made it to like almost 11 million or something,
Oh man.
when the clone army only had 6 million.
Yeah. Quick question. Who's this out of TCW? Who is the scariest droid you saw when you watched it?
Scariest droid.
Or
Hmm.
or just a droid that kind of creeped you out?
I mean, buzz droids kind of count on that one. um, but aside from that, I mean, I don't know because I don't really know of many droids in there. Oh, I know. The one from the Mandalore arc, where when Kenobi and Anakin are on that like kind of like cruise like ship heading to Coruscant.
Oh
They
yeah, that
they
one.
they sneak those like spider droids on there. Yeah, that freaked me the crap out. Especially in the way like one of them was literally using the like one clone as like a dildo doll.
Oh god. Oh my god. The one that really creeped me out. Well, there was actually a couple. The super tactical droid, the the first appearance of the commando droids, the way when the clone's looking through his little view thing, and then he's like, "What the?" And then you just see that head pop up, and I'm like, "What the fuck is that?" It looks like a regular battle droid, but it's not. And then there's the little suicide droids that blow up in Coruscant. I actually have a joke for that. They literally transform into vacuum cleaners, and they're like, oh great, they're transformers.
I mean, essentially, I mean, when it comes with those kind of droids, they're not even meant for like battle. They're literally like terrorism, basically.
Yeah. Also, I do kind like the aqua droids are kind of freaky too.
Aqua droids never really freaked me out.
There was another droid that really freaked me out. What was it? Yeah, I was. Oh, the spider crab droid.
Eh, that one was okay. Um, yeah, I mean, thankfully, none of the droids will ever be as scary as some of the organics in that freaking show.
Oh my god. Um, well, I mean, there is the Death Troopers. Those guys are freaky as hell. I mean, it's not in TCW, but it's
Well, no, I'm talking about even just TCW because it's like the Sarlacc from Umbara freaked me the F out. the Geonosians, especially the undead ones, I'm like,
I,
ugh.
oh
Like
my
I
god.
pity those two clone troopers, like the ones that were climbing up the cave to try to get a transmission in, and literally the undead just surround them and just they're dead. They're dead.
Yeah. Yeah. That is just that it was freaky as hell. And those worm things that come out of the eggs and possess the clones. Oh god.
Well, yeah, of course. It like I mean, literally, it's just like, ugh, yeah. There are some. Oh, and do what sucks. Apparently, this is weird. I looked this up. Apparently, the whole concept for the brainworms were actually like based on like a real life organism that was like in a worm form that develops inside of your body. And that ironically, like it actually, I forget what it's called, but apparently it did have, according to the few victims that it had, because it actually like slithered around in your eye. And
Oh.
apparently, literally, when this was happening, there was a guy who was an artist, and he came up with this huge painting. And he didn't figure out till later that he was drawing up an eye, like that's what he was actually drawing was an eye.
Oh my god.
And he wasn't even kind of aware of it. He was actually saying like, this was not my thoughts. This was not my idea. Like I wasn't thinking of this. This was just something that instinctually I was doing.
Yeah.
It and so he actually, so the conclusion was is that apparently those organic beings actually could somewhat influence his thoughts a little bit, which is kind of freaky. But
That is freaky as hell. Oh god. I mean, how many times have we actually had a Star Wars horror story?
I mean, we had obviously we have the brainworm episode. We have the death. We have the original Death Trooper program that backfires
Oh
terribly.
god. Oh, the the Mer Talisman. It creates rock ghouls.
Yeah, which can turn people into rat ghoul.
Oh,
Um, so yeah, there's a lot of different stuff.
it's yeah, it
Oh, there was a time where Ventress used Sith sorcery to resurrect a bunch of Gungans.
oh, great. I just remember that too. Oh. I mean, also there was the time that the Dathomirian witch, she basically resurrected dead Night Sisters.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of moments like that. I mean, there are things that are just kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, and this is a kids show for crying out loud.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the whole, yeah, that's pretty much the whole entirety with the whole grounding of TCW and some stuff. I mean, Star Wars has never been stranger to violence. We'll say that much.
Yeah. Okay. Last question. Okay, what does Star Wars mean to you?
Um, Star Wars, as it is to me, is a reflection on it's taking a highly exaggerated mysticism element, but it's serving as lessons to apply to yourself and the outlook on life. So when you think about the conflicts between the Jedi, the Sith, the Republic, all these different governments, and all these large scale wars and stuff, they're kind of reflections on just how the social condition is like very, to me it's always been in a way a character study. It's always been about the psychology of these characters within these large events. And that's always what's appealed to Star Wars to me, because we look at even our real world right now, and it's so easy to feel so small compared to everything that's happening. And so you have to kind of take what's out there and apply it to your life experience and kind of understand what it's kind of unlocking mysteries and finding discovery in yourself. And so the way that I've always held with Star Wars is that there's always these characters to learn from, to take in experience, to fear, to create philosophy. Like, honestly, I don't think I'd be as much of a philosophical thinker as I am right now if it wasn't for Star Wars. Because Star Wars is one of those franchises that create ideas and then they challenge those ideas. And that's something I've always found appealing to its nature. It's partially why, despite Empire being my favorite Star Wars movie for everything it's done, Revenge of the Sith is my second favorite because of how much it gets into the philosophical questions. Because Revenge of the Sith, yeah, it is the whole idea of, yeah, Palpatine's evil, he's trying to take power, but that's not all there is to it. Anakin's turn to the dark side a lot is based on his doubt in the Jedi Order. And something I've always enjoyed about Revenge of the Sith and the way Palpatine talks about the Jedi and Sith conflict is he's not denying that the Sith have done a lot of evil. He's not denying it. At no point does he say, oh, the Sith are like really good people. All he's doing is he's basically knocking the Jedi down in trying to kind of portray to Anakin that they're a lot more similar than you want to believe they are. That, it's kind of like what Palpatine says in the Revenge of the Sith novelization, where Anakin says the Jedi are meant to guard peace and justice, and Palpatine's like, the Jedi have not done a good job at peace right now. You have to agree with that. Sure, and who is to say that a Sith wouldn't have done a better job? So there's already these challenging ideas, these ideas of legality, morality, because that's a big thing. We even, unfortunately, the Revenge of the Sith movie can't cover all of this, but the novel really does, where you even take things like Mace Windu and the struggle between him, Kenobi, and Yoda, where the big question comes up on which one should override the other, legality or morality. Because, when Windu goes to arrest Palpatine and Palpatine literally betrays this, a lot of it's an act, but what he says makes sense, where at first Palpatine's like, you can't be serious. And, Windu's standing his ground. And then Windu says, you're under arrest, don't make this difficult or something. And Palpatine's like, under what charge? What crime have I committed? And they say that he's a Sith Lord. And Palpatine responds, is being a Sith a crime? I don't recall in the Constitution it saying that my private religious practices is somehow a crime against our government. And so Palpatine's finding every loophole to defend himself. And it's crazy to me because you think about that, you think the morality, and you think about how Mace, for example, was planning on killing Palpatine if Anakin didn't do the thing he did, when it's Anakin was right. Mace Windu striking Palpatine down in cold blood would have been against the Jedi Code. It would have been against it. It wouldn't have been the Jedi way. And so I love these ideas being challenged, and it's actually why recently in The Mandalorian, there's a line I really like from that one character, the bald guy with the beard. I forget his name. Mayfield, thank you. Where he downright says, everyone has their ideals until they're backed into a point of desperation. Once when that happens, they will drop it. They'll always find a way to make exceptions or loopholes if it means getting what they want.
Yeah.
And that applies to literally everyone. That's kind of what I like about that philosophy, because he's referring to Mando, but you could say that to just about everyone. I mean, literally the Jedi are like that. They were all high and mighty about their rules until those rules were no longer convenient for them. And then after that, they had full intention of just killing Palpatine, or even like Yoda was trying to assassinate Palpatine and such. And so, like, it's kind of like one of those things where when the Jedi are back to a point of desperation, they pretty much just say, fuck it.
Yeah. Okay, so for me, it's a lot more personal because of the influence of my dad. But when he passed away about 5 or 6 years ago, I was kind of in a depressive state. But when I heard that The Force Awakens was coming and I saw all the trailers, it gave me hope for the franchise. Because at that point, I got into a lot of arguments with quote unquote purists and a lot of Trekkies, and it was it was not going well for me. But then, well, we have TCW, we have the micro series. Like, there's a lot of great things that are coming out, not just like from like old EU stuff, but new EU. Like, I've always been curious, like, what happened between the years between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, and we kind of have that, sort of. But it's great that they're finally expanding and they're not just focusing on the Jedi and this and all that. It's great that they're kind of just branching out, and they're letting people who are dedicated to the fans and are dedicated to creating a good story do what they do best. Like Dave Filoni, he made some, and Jon Favreau, a lot of the directors who directed most of the episodes of The Mandalorian, they did a really good job. And it wasn't just action, action, action. There's actual, like you said, there's like lines in there that challenge everything that the main character is. And Mando actually goes from like this hard ass bounty hunter to kind of more of like a parental figure. And we see that it kind of reminds me of Ripley from Aliens. Basically, she was a hard ass, she was a survivor, then she runs into Newt, and her maternal instinct kicks in. Now, Mando doesn't have the maternal instinct, but he has the parental instinct that's slowly developing. And it's great
Well, the
that
thing is that Mando has a relation with the kid because, in many ways, he sees himself in him. The idea that this kid has no family, he has literally no one. And it's a lot like him, where tragic events took all that away from him.
yeah, and I really like. It's not that. I mean, Star Wars has always been. It's never afraid to like poke fun at itself or just throw in a joke just for the sake of throwing in a joke because to break up the monotony sometimes. But the fact that they have baby or Grogu, sorry, and there was the one episode where Mando and Kara are on the Razor Crest. Rest in peace, that hunk of junk. Oh man, I cannot believe they did that. Um, so then and then while they're talking in the cargo hold, Grogu's up in the cockpit and he's just screwing around with the controls and he's having the time of his life. I thought that was great. And there's also the part where Kara and Mando are fighting, and then they have their blasters pointed at each other, and Grogu's just standing over there, just sipping on soup. It's just it's great comedic timing, and I've always appreciated that from this show particularly. So, and if they can kind of replicate that success and kind of build off of it, I think there's going to be great hopes for the future. Now, that's not to say that, I mean, it's had its ups and downs. Like, do I even need to mention certain things like, oh, I don't know, the Ewok movie, the Christmas special, things like that? Like, do
Well,
I have.
I mean, those I don't even really pay attention to because they're so inconsequential to the rest of the story that it really doesn't matter. I'm just more for me, what's sad when looking at the way Disney's handled Star Wars is that they're finally starting to get on track a little bit. Except for the fact that I'm kind of a little bit disturbed that they're trying to turn Star Wars into this Marvel like thing. Like, do we really need 10 like freaking like 20 shows in regards to Star Wars going on simultaneously? Like, get us one thing at a time, please. Like, let us enjoy what is the thing and then move on to the next big thing. Like, you don't need to announce 10 million things at the same time. Star Wars doesn't work the same way Marvel does. But putting that aside, um, what's sad is that Disney's finally kind of getting on track with a lot of the things that Star Wars valued. It's just this is the disappointment, especially when I look at things like The Mandalorian. Despite how much I've enjoyed The Mandalorian overall as a show, it has its fair share of problems, but it's overall a fairly good show. What saddens me is that it's hard to get invested long term because we know where it's going to end up. And we know that it's going to lead up to the sequel BS. And so to me, I mean, I'm one of those people where I hate to say it, but I do legit believe that the sequel trilogy existing is holding the canon back. I think it does because you have these three movies that make no sense, literally deconstruct everything that has been built up, etc. You know, does all this crazy, like, you know, does all these shenanigans, butchers a lot of the characters, and just all for what? It just resets the status quo to exactly the same point that it was in Return of the Jedi. Like, seriously, tell me what the difference between the ending of the Return of the Jedi versus the ending of Rise of Skywalker. Tell me the difference. Bad guy faction gets destroyed, quote unquote bad guy. You know, I'm saying in the context of the movies. Bad guy faction gets destroyed. Good guys win. New Republic established. Jedi Order rebuild. That's it. It's the endings are literally identical, except one was earned and the other took a lot of plot elements that made no sense at all and were just implemented for the sake of nostalgia, probably. When it's like, what could have been, what should have been an interesting storyline about the legacy characters and their outlook. Like, do I compare the sequel trilogy to? Because I swear, ever since I saw this show, it just pissed me off even further. Is recently I've been getting into Karate Kid again, and I've been watching the Cobra Kai TV show. And about a month ago, I finished season 2. Season 3 is coming out in January. And that show handles the, you know, it has a similar premise where it's like the legacy characters are kind of like now like the mentors. And you have this new generation of people, but they handle the characters so well and that they get an equal amount of focus to the new characters. Like they're not like pushing the old characters aside or ruining them to elevate these new characters. Instead, they're making these old characters being these teachers as part of their struggle, which is something that they should have done with a character like Luke. Like, imagine if Luke was training a new generation of Jedi in the sequel trilogy in his conflict, instead of just giving up and just being a hermit, was instead based on the fact that he doesn't really know how to teach because he wasn't trained in the traditional Jedi schooling. He doesn't have that knowledge. For him, it's all a new thing for him. So that would have made a far more enticing conflict in development of his character than something like, oh, I'm giving up on the Jedi Order because I tried to kill my nephew in his sleep and it failed. Like, what?
From a certain point of view.
Okay, yes, he never he never went through with it, but the fact that he was even convinced long enough to draw his lightsaber is bad enough to me. Like, when you draw that lightsaber, you are essentially like, you had the thought in your head long enough to actually legit consider it. Which to me is just as bad. Like, yeah, sure. He may have stopped himself from doing it, But even then, that's only because he literally was looking Ben dead in the eyes as he was awake and terrified of him.
Yeah. The thing for me that kind of makes the sequels kind of not, they're kind of like below the prequels in terms of how I see things.
I mean, at least the prequels were original and actually were cohesive as an overall narrative.
Now, for me, it was the fact that when I saw The Force Awakens, when it came out, I felt when a certain character died, it just the
You
fa-
can just say the name of the character. You don't.
yeah, okay,
You're
okay.
you're acting like our audience hasn't seen a movie over 5 years old by now.
Well, you never know, but when
Okay,
Han Solo
character
was Han
nostalgia.
Solo was when Han was killed, it saddened me because I know Harrison Ford wanted his character to be originally killed off, and I respect that. But the fact that they basically said, "Okay, we'll give you what you want, but we'll make it in such a way that it'll traumatize the fans for a long time." But in that scene with Harrison Ford and Adam Driver, where they're just talking, and it's so good. Like, it's one of the few things in The Force Awakens that I can actually say was awesome, and it was great. And I really like how Harrison Ford was back to being Han Solo again. And it's like when Ray says, "This is the ship that made the Kessel run in 14 parsecs," I'm like, 12 parsecs. And Han says, 12. And it's like, yeah, he's basically emulating the fans in a lot of ways. And I think that's one of, if not the strengths of The Force Awakens in general, is that they were able to emulate the thoughts and feelings of the fans in that, well, Star Wars was not in a good place at the time. So maybe if we get it out in movie form and we basically say, "This is how you think of Star Wars, here you go."
I mean, that's fine. I mean, I actually don't mind The Force Awakens. Like, that's kind of the thing. When I'm talking about the sequel trilogy and my issues with its quality, I'm mainly referring to The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. I mean, yeah, in a lot of areas, The Force Awakens kind of started the trilogy out on a bad foot in a lot of areas, but at least the story as a whole was still salvageable. It was still something that, the story had a decent opening to where, if I could say nothing else about The Force Awakens, even though I don't think the movie's too great in its own merits, at least it set a decent foundation for the rest of the trilogy. And it wasn't until The Last Jedi that butchered it that, I actually maintained some excitement. Like, yeah, Rey was overpowered as crap, but I knew in my mind there had to be some explanation for it. So, especially with the mystery element of her parents. I was interested in this idea of Kylo Ren, the whole "I will finish what you started" grandfather. Like, what is he finishing? And I was interested within the mysteries behind Snoke. What happened to Luke? There was a lot of things that I was interested in finding out and interested in seeing where these new characters went because, you know, other than Rey being a little too Mary Sue like in The Force Awakens, I liked these new characters. I mean, Rey in The Force Awakens actually had a lot of cute moments, which was nice. The Force Awakens is probably the only movie that actually treats Finn with dignity.
I mean,
And then,
he did get to fight Phasma, and I thought that was a good fight. But that's a case where the deleted scene was probably the better option for Phasma, because by God, the only thing she did in The Force Awakens was walk around menacingly, and that's it. And
oh, that was literally just an action figure on screen. That's all she is.
am I the only one who really liked the fact that
I mean, at
um
least General Grievous got a good fight scene.
I don't know about that, but
Okay, I'm saying after their duel when like Kenobi literally tries kicking him and it just fails miserably.
oh, that, yeah. Kenobi, in terms of the movies, like especially in
I'm just saying,
revisiting.
at least for other toy-like characters like Grievous or some, because a lot of people think of Grievous when they think of a character that's just kind of like an action figure. At least Grievous actually did things. At least he was actually being useful, even if his depiction was pathetic compared to his EU self. At least he
Yeah.
actually did things in the movie. While Phasma literally just walked around. I don't even think she fired her blaster once in the
Oh, she
Force.
did. She did in the Last Jedi at the chicken walker that BB-8 was hijacked. It's
Well,
like,
yeah, I know. So I'm just saying, it's like she does nothing in the Force Awakens, and then in the Last Jedi, I thought, because you know how the trailers were advertising Phasma a lot again, especially with Finn's fight with her. So I
yeah.
was like, dang, maybe they're actually going to make use of her. 2/3 of the movie, she's not even in there, and when she shows up to capture Finn and Rose, and DJ, it's
Hmm.
like, and she's like, FN 2187, it's so good to have you back. I'm like, my response in The Last Jedi was literally, I forgot you were in the movie. I literally forgot Phasma was in this movie. Like, that's how bad it was. And then her fight scene with Finn is just disappointing. It's kind of pathetic because it's like, really? Finn just smacks her in the head once and that's it? Like, really? And so, that's what I'm saying. It's like The Force Awakens, other than Phasma, every character had an interesting foundation. And even Phasma, at least she kind of had a chance of being redeemed. Because that's what's stupid. In the movie, she sucks, but if you read her book in her comic series, it's really good. And she's actually a really cool character in those because she's in the comics and the book, she's this ruthless survivor who ideologically doesn't care about the First Order. She's basically the idea of sticking with the Force in power and basically using it to further her own combat skills. And that's why a whole comic series in The Force Awakens was about her hunting down a First Order officer who knew the truth about her lowering the shields of Starkiller Base. And so she hunts him down and kills him just to preserve her image. And then that would have tied really well into the deleted scene of The Last Jedi, where when Finn reveals that she was the one that did it to the other stormtroopers, and the stormtroopers are like confused, they're like doubting. And Phasma literally just cold-heartedly kills all the stormtroopers. Like, that's interesting elements about her character that I would have loved to see more of. But the problem is that Rian Johnson and just everything with The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker ruined these characters. Like, Phasma just went nowhere. Hux got butchered. Like, dude, I miss Ginger Hitler. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah. Hux. Do I even need to make a joke about him? Like, come on. In the first scene of The Last Jedi, what is he reduced to? Finn is literally calling him up, and it's like, "Hi, I'm right outside your ship, right out in front of you, and I'm gonna make your mom joke." Which,
well, let's be for real. Hux just doing that confusion, like, oh, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Let's be for real. If this was Hux from The Force Awakens, he would have just said, just blow up the ship straight away. I literally do not care. He probably would have made some grand Nazi like speech and then just be like, okay, blow up the ship now.
yeah, and also I do have to give credit where credit is due. I do really like the scene with Luke and Yoda because you know what? We haven't
Okay,
seen.
good within okay, it's good if it's self-contained. When you put it in context with the rest of the movie, though, it kind of falls apart. And then it doesn't help that Yoda, for some reason, can summon lightning? Question mark?
Yeah, I'm a little confused about that too. What the heck?
I mean, if Force Ghosts can do that the whole time, like, that's the thing with the sequel trilogy. Force Ghosts are so BS because in Yoda in The Last Jedi does the lightning, And then in The Rise of Skywalker, Luke physically catches the lightsaber. It's like, so if Force Ghosts can manipulate the physical realm, or yeah, because Luke also uses the Force to lift the X-Wing as a Force Ghost. So my question is that if Force Ghosts can manipulate the physical realm, why couldn't they just do that in the originals? Like, you know, when Luke's confronting the Emperor, like imagine if Luke's getting electrocuted, he's like, "Father, please," and Yoda just shows up as a Force Ghost and just uses Tuta Menace on Palpatine.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Or like better yet, in The Rise of Skywalker, why don't all the Jedi just show up with lightsabers and just take on Palpatine? Like,
isn't there a how it should have ended video basically doing
well,
that?
yes, because they highlight the stupidity of that, right? It's like, wait, you guys can hold lightsabers and you can use the Force. Why don't you just come help me? And they're like, oh, that's a good idea, actually. Gosh, the writing in those movies are so bad. It's actually like ridiculous. But
I agree with you on that, and they're so bad that they make episode 2 tolerable by comparison. If that's any.
well, again, at least episode 2 had a cohesive plot. Its dialogue may have been all over the place, for lack of a better word, but you know, but at least its plot made sense. Like, okay, separatist movements happening. They're building up a droid army. They're trying to kill Padme because Newt Gunray wants Padme dead. Jedi protect Padme while trying to discover who's trying to kill her. Which one thing just leads to another, which leads to another. That's fine. Yeah, is it a little contrived? Yeah, like, oh, it so happens that the assassin is the same guy who dons the entire clone army, which so happens to be funded by the guy who leads the separatist movement, which so happens to get the corporations to fund the droid army, which so happens to be the same army from episode 1. It's like, okay, just stop. but yeah, at least it made sense. The Last Jedi, on the other hand, and The Rise of Skywalker, it's like midpoint in the movie, I'm like, why? Like they're saying, oh, we're contacting allies in the Outer Rim, and then they never show up, and they're like, no one's coming. The spark is laying out. So like, I'm like, wait, let me get this straight. Your entire plan was based on calling for help that wasn't even organized, and you didn't even know if they were going to show up. Are you actually kidding me? That was your entire plan. Like, dude, at that point, the First Order deserved to win at that point. And then another good example, well, and then it adds even more fuel to the fire in The Rise of Skywalker, because it's like, okay, if they didn't come before, when the First Order was just the shadow of its former self, like Snoke is dead, there's only one ship left within that specific fleet, which even then is heavily damaged. If they didn't come to help the Resistance for that, why would they come to help the Resistance against Palpatine and his 10,000 Star Destroyers with planet-killing weapons?
Miniaturized Death Star tech. Oh, that's another thing. Oh my god. Do we really need a giant Pokeball Death Star? I mean, yeah, it makes sense in the context of bringing new...
Pikachu, I choose you!
Oh god. Yeah, that's literally...
You know, honestly, that actually would have been more better than a Star Killer base. Like, they just build a giant Pokemon ball and it unleashes, like, a giant space creature.
Oh my god.
That eats planets.
Yeah.
Really? But then it'd just be a ripoff of Galactus. But either way, that would have been better than...
Yeah. Anyway, we should probably end this. This has gone on too long. Oh, gosh.
Yep, hurry up and finish the dang video.
Yep. Oh, surprise! Dropping a small curveball. We are doing our first versus collab, and hopefully that gets out sometime in the new year. So stick around for that.
Probably by next month.
Okay, that's good to know. Because, and I'm not gonna reveal who we're hitting because I want to keep it a surprise. But, I think you guys might appreciate this. Just, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think they'll get a good kick
I
out of
mean,
it?
I mean, we'll find out when we get there. I
Yep.
ain't gonna predict your viewers.
All right. So I'm gonna sign off. So and thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have been absolutely amazing.
Alrighty, well, guys, and obviously as well, if you're interested in already existing content related to gaming versus videos or movies, check out my channel as well.
I will leave a link in the description just so you can
Good,
check it.
good. Anywho, all right, well, I'm signing off. I got places I gotta go, so see ya, everyone. This is King Orange signing out. Peace.
I'm out. I'm out too. See you later.